All right, good evening, everyone. This is the Monday, April 27th meeting of the Policy Committee. Welcome. I'm going to get us started by just reviewing the agenda. So you'll see here, this is our spring meeting, and we've had an update from the School Boards Association with several policies that require minor revisions. All of these policies today are overwhelmingly minor, but there are a few that may engage in some specific discussion. And so I'm happy to look forward to reviewing each of these policies with you. I'm going to begin with Ms. Green, who is standing in for Mr. Bray to speak about charter schools and transportation, the first two policies. So Ms. Green, if you would get us started.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. So the policies 140 and 810 deal with clarification pertaining to the requirement of the school district to provide transportation to charter school students and our responsibilities. So there are minor changes to this, to both of these policies. It's to identify the purpose, changing that a little bit, adding in the part of transportation for charter school students. And then it identifies our responsibilities as a school district to provide transportation to charter school students. And it is similar to non-public students in that if it's a charter school located within the district or a 10-mile radius outside of the district. We currently do not have any charter schools within our district. We have one charter school that falls within that 10-mile radius outside of our district, and we have four participating students that currently attend that charter school. So we are required to transport or provide free transportation similar to non-public students and to in-district students to those eligible students attending that charter school. I will say that one of the changes that's different from non-public transportation is that normally we go with our bell and calendar days. We do not have to do that for the charter schools. We have to provide transportation based upon their calendars. So those were the minor changes to both of these policies. Are there any questions regarding these changes?
How different are their calendars?
I don't believe that they are vastly different. I talked to in my discussion with Mr. Bray, the four charter school students would be able to easily merge onto a non-public school route that we currently have. So in the event that we had to start transporting these students, it would not add a run to our existing load.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
I did want to share with everyone, Mr. Jordan should be joining us momentarily. He was just signing on. Because Board Docs is having a national outage today, we've downloaded these policies for your review, and we'll share this link with the slides at the end of the meeting. But what you'll see here is there's really just some minor adjustments to the language under purpose, what you see in bold there, to make sure that all students have an opportunity to attend schools that operate independently from the school district was added, that phrasing. And then a couple of very brief additions here in the second and third paragraphs underneath authority. And then the primary change is right here under transportation, where we are to ensure that when charter school students are being transported, that it is free transportation and that it does not need to be identical, as Kara has already mentioned, to that provided to traditional public school students. So these are the predominant changes in this particular policy. So I wanted to be able to show you that language here. And then in the next policy under transportation, the very same language is utilized. And so you'll see here no changes to definitions or authority, but clarification that charter schools are to have free transportation and it need not be identical to that provided to traditional public school students. So those are the only minor changes to the language. in these two policies. So I'll continue to scroll down and you can see nothing else has changed in the existing policy.
Are you able to say what charter school it is?
Is Ms. Green able to say what charter school it
Yeah.
is?
I
Ms.
believe
Green?
I believe it's Greenwood Charter School.
Okay, and is that all grades or is that like
I
like
I believe it's K-12.
okay, all right.
I'll clarify just in case that is not accurate, but I do believe it's K-12.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Mr. Jordan, I see your hand raised.
No, actually, that was my Dr. Aberly uh, raised my question.
Okay, terrific.
Mhm.
So if there aren't any other questions, we'll move these two policies to a single reading for approval next week. Are you
Sounds-
okay?
Yes, I'm okay with this moving forward.
Thank you. All right. So then we're going to move Ms. Green to a third policy, the district audit. So Ms. Green, do you want to pick up there?
Absolutely. So, historically, the Auditor General's Office of the state conducted periodic audits of the school district's finances on behalf of Pennsylvania Department of Education. This policy shifts that responsibility from the AG's office back to Pennsylvania Department of Education. We are still required to have a local audit as we do every year. The district's responsibility is still held to upload that audited information through what's called the annual financial report. That is on the Pennsylvania Department of Education's website. That is due by October 31st of each year. At the latest, December 31st is when the audit should be issued. So that's what these minor changes are to the 619 policy, is just that it's a shift of responsibility back to Pennsylvania Department of Education. And it just holds true that our auditing, having a local auditor audit our books annually is still a requirement and a responsibility of the district. Any questions with that?
I have a question. I'm just curious, where was that shift initiated? Where did that come from?
I believe this was part of just state government. I
Mhm.
will tell you, the state hasn't, we knew about this, that the state auditors general, the auditor general's office was no longer looking at the finances because all of the public schools are required to have a local audit. So they thought it was redundant for them to come out and do a state audit that way. Also, we're required to upload the annual financial report to the Pennsylvania Department of Education. So all the financial information flows to Pennsylvania Department of Education anyway. So I think it's
Anyway,
just a redundancy of overlapping of the two departments.
okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
So is there an expectation of changing requirements due to that? So for instance, like, the audits are looked at a little differently as a result of the change, or is it pretty much the same for us in terms of reporting?
It'll be the same for us in reporting. It is saying in here that the Pennsylvania Department of Education is in the process of determining the details regarding the scheduling and scope of what auditing the financials look like. But with the business administrators, we had discussions on this when we were told that the Auditor General's office would no longer be coming out and talking about financials with us or scheduling those. Um, like I said, I believe there's a redundancy in the fact that we have to have a local audit, which is from a CPA firm, audited firm, and that we have to upload that audit in the format that the state requires, and it has to be certified that it was done by uh, a certified auditing firm. So I think in saying all of that, they're still trying to figure out what the scope of what they'll do is as far as coming to the district, or if they will even audit anything. Because again, independent auditors come in and do the books, and that's reported to the state each year. So I don't anticipate that there will be major changes. Our responsibility will be the same, is that we have to produce the audit each year, and we have to make sure that we meet the deadline when we're doing the AFR upload.
Thank you for your response.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Ms. Green, I just wanted to give the board members, committee members, an opportunity to take a look at this new language in the policy, so that you can see what's in bold are the additions to the current policy. Just to ensure you don't have any further questions. And then I'll scroll down under delegation of responsibility. 1 second. So are there any questions about this new language in the policy? Alec, I see your hand raised.
Hey, can you scroll up to the one a bit above, please?
Sure.
Do you know where you go to access the public records of the district?
Ms.
Sure.
Green can answer that. Sure.
You go onto the website underneath the business office. When you look to the left-hand side, when you hit the department, you're going to see audited financial statements. You can access that link, and it has both our audited financial statements from our local auditing firm, and it also has the annual financial reports, and it has all the historical and current on the website.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome. I also just want to say is that the new bold under the purpose, the bolded information and the requirements of us to upload to the state by October 31st, that is not a new responsibility. That is something that we have always done in the past. So it is just tweaking the language and inserting the language into this policy that it shows as a requirement. But that requirement has always been a responsibility of the district. That is not changing.
All right. So committee members, are you comfortable with this moving forward?
Yes.
Again, we would also consider this a single reading.
Yes, we are. I'm comfortable.
Okay, I see nods. Thank you. All right, so we're going to move forward. Now, the first 3 policies came out of changes through the state government. But in this particular case, we're seeing a change here at the district level. So we'd like to make an adjustment. So Dr. Lutz is here to discuss that with you.
Sure. Thanks, Dr. Yannicka. In working with our nurses, we've had some students have some changes to some of the medications that they've been prescribed. Previously, we had students who had auto-injected epinephrine or EpiPens. You'll recall that those are the pens that you jab into somebody's leg if they were to have an allergic reaction, and the pen auto-injects into the person. Anyone on the staff can actually use those EpiPens, and people are trained yearly on the use of those. They have to pass a test with a pen from the nurse. But recently we've had some students who have come in. There's been some new discoveries with medication, and there's now a nasal delivery epinephrine. And so based on that fact, we wanted to make sure that our policies reflect what our students are actually using. So we're going to look for your approval to change that language from the auto injector language to delivery system. This will help cover us in the future if there are other delivery systems that could potentially be used by students. Is there any questions about that change in policy?
I'll just show here, if you look under guidelines, you can see where auto injectors would be deleted and just epinephrine delivery system would remain. Dr. Aberle, I see your hand raised.
So I have a question around other types of medications. So, for example, like migraine medication, something like sumatriptan, that can also be nasally administered as well as in tablet form. Does this, but this seems specifically to cater to students that have allergic reactions and require epinephrine. Are there cases where we have students that have other types of medication that don't fall into asthma or allergy or allergic reaction medication that are also covered in this policy?
So Pennsylvania law does not allow students to self-carry any medications outside of asthma inhalers and EpiPens and now Epinasal sprays. So that's the change in this. We certainly have students who have lots of other medications. A nurse has to administer those medications.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Yep.
So, Dr. Aberley, and for everyone on the committee, I just shifted from 210 to 210.1, which speaks specifically to possession and administration, just to clarify what Dr. Lux was just sharing. So if you see here under definitions, it's a little bit broader than what we were discussing previously. And again, the only change we're looking at is that removing the phrase auto injector and replacing it with delivery system. Mrs. McGranahan?
Yeah, well, first of all, I just think it's a good idea. I feel like as these things are changing, it gives us more, we probably can't keep up with the changes in the, the medical field. So this gives us a broader thing. I'm just curious, without having read this ahead of time, is there language in the policy that also talks to how, or speaks to how the teachers would be alerted that their students might be self-carrying and things like that?
So as part of the procedures, if we have students who are self-carry, that is both reflected as a medical alert on our student information system. And then nurses meet with those teachers at the beginning of each year to share that information with them. Like I said, all staff members have to be trained in this, but specifically our nurses meet with teachers who might have more of an occasion to do that because a student in their classroom has that prescribed.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
So our intention would be, again, to have this be a single read and to have both 210 and 210.1 come before the board for a vote on Tuesday night. Are we comfortable with that?
I am, yes.
Yes.
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you, everybody. All right, so the next policy is 236.1 threat assessment. In this instance, there was a change in state interest, and therefore the Pennsylvania School Code was updated to ensure that there were established procedures for threat assessment teams. And these threat assessment teams, they really wanted us to define within our MOU with the local police how those threat assessment teams would work. And I'll show you the policy in just a moment. But we did meet with the Springfield Township Police Department. They and we reviewed our threat assessment team procedures, and we're all in agreement. And so we have two items that we would bring forward on Tuesday night. One is our revised memorandum of understanding with the police, adding the threat assessment component. And the second is an adjustment within that MOU that speaks specifically to the point of contact. And having conversation with the local police unrelated to this policy, they did indicate that they would prefer moving forward that all communication with the police, rather than through a single point of contact, such as the chief, occur by calling 911 so they can maintain a record of all communications with the district on emergency matters. So both the revised MOU reflects the threat assessment language that's been requested through the state code. And then we also have this phrase down here at the bottom of this slide in italics on page 16 of the MOU, which is linked here. It's the existing MOU with a threat assessment page, but this will also clarify that we will use 911, the emergency dispatch for the county, when we are communicating with the police. And then I'll just go into the policy. Within the policy, under this new code, there are a few changes. One, under authority, you can see in bold here that we have protocols for consultation between our threat assessment team and law enforcement as needed between juvenile justice agencies, county agencies, healthcare providers, or behavioral service providers, and then refer students whose behavior indicates a potential threat for additional interventions or supports, including the exchange of relevant information in accordance with federal and state law. So again, this is just continued efforts by the state to support and enhance collaboration between local police departments and school districts. And then you'll see below that, we have to select one of the appropriate options. And in our case, individuals to a threat assessment team at each school building. And our makeup is appointed individuals to a threat assessment team at each school building in the district. And so we have separate threat assessment teams at each school. There are some consistent members of that team from the district office, but we are consistent in our threat assessment procedures. And Dr. Lutz is here to answer questions on that. But let me first just wrap up this. We do have behavioral health professionals, and we have an individual who serves on the county threat assessment team if that's applicable. And then we knocked off assigning staff members because we already did that above. And then you can see the training. It's my responsibility to ensure that we have proper training in the SAT program process. That's number 5. We do youth suicide awareness, prevention and response, and trauma-informed approaches, as well as safe to say procedures, multi-tiered systems of support, and positive behavior intervention and support. So we use all of these components in our threat assessment process. And then I'm just going to scroll down a little further here. There's no changes. That's why I'm scrolling quickly. There are no changes to what we have selected for what the members of the threat assessment team will do in an assessment. So these are exactly the same as the policy we currently have. And then you'll see here, there was just the term incident was not a new term. That's just, they wanted to bold that term of how you define a threat. There's some clarifications for students with disabilities. And then we have always used the threat assessment report as part of the annual report. So as the board knows, we always provide details in our end of the year report to the board. And so this is the revised policy that then, and I'll go back to this, that then goes back to our revised MOU with the police. And this memorandum of understanding, I'll just scroll down to where the threat assessment team comes in. This is something with which you would be familiar. You've approved this before. Our current MOU was actually not due for renewal this summer, but we are a year ahead. So now it will go from 2026 to 2028. So this new section was added, Section 8, threat assessment and timely reporting. And I will send all of this to you. Mr. Jordan, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, so in reading this, it appears that this is leaning toward those individuals that are within the school premises. But I guess my question, and we reviewed some of policy related to visitors, but I guess my question is, how does this intertwine with threats that are coming from outside of the population within the school district?
It's a great question. When we are, the threat assessment team is in place to determine whether or not students in our school buildings are a threat, and if so, to what end. So I'm not sure what specifically you're thinking about, but perhaps if it were a threat from an outside agency threatening a student, that would also apply.
Well, it could be that, or it could be an individual who's not a school district student coming to, to pose a significant threat.
So
And it could be any one of them, parent, just anyone, anyone outside of our population.
Yes. So our work with the local police department involves any potential threat to our school campuses, to our students, whether they are coming from within or without. Who takes responsibility, whether that would be a local police department, could be the city of Philadelphia, could be a state level police, it could be a federal level. We've had interactions with the FBI, for example, on cyber threats. And so we work with law enforcement to determine who's in the best position to investigate and take action on any threat to the district at any level. And all of that is embedded within this document. Dr. Lutz, is there anything you would add to that answer?
Sure. I would just say that when we talk about threat assessment teams, those are for looking into when a student makes a comment or has a behavior that indicates to us that there may be a potential action that may follow. So my best example is a student gets upset in class and says, I want to blow up the school. The threat assessment team comes in and does this prescribed process to determine whether the student is a threat to themselves or to others. In most cases, we're able to resolve that threat as what we call transient. In other words, the student isn't going to act on that threat. So I always give the example of there's a big difference between a second grader saying that they're going to blow up the school and a high school senior saying that, right? The second grader doesn't have means, motive, or opportunity to, blow up a school, so to speak. And so those questions guide us through that process. So if we're able to resolve it as transient under this, we wouldn't necessarily call the police and involve them. But let's say that the student refused to walk back the threat, and in finding out that they have materials to do something, that's when we would involve law enforcement, and this policy would kick into place, letting police know so that they can take the additional steps. And then as the school, our job is to help find supports for the student. So if there's a threat from the outside, we may not, and it doesn't involve one of our students, we wouldn't be running them through this threat assessment procedure.
I'll also thank you, Dr. Lutz.
So
I'll also
thank you for your response.
I moved down to a section of this addendum to the MOU on reporting of credible threats. And I'm not sure if this speaks to where some of your question is, Mr. Jordan, but if you look here, reportable conditions, notification by the district to the police occurs whether it's a student, a staff member, school property, or the broader school community who is the subject of a threat. And then whether or not we have a student or other individual who possesses a weapon, or the threat assessment team concludes that a threat presents an imminent, serious, or escalating risk requiring law enforcement intervention. So, and that is a collaborative conversation between myself, our supervisor of campus safety, administrators who may be directly engaged in a particular situation based on all the information we have, could be members of our clinical team, and then we always err on the side of caution in speaking with the police. And then the timing you can see here, imminent versus non-imminent. Typically, we speak to the police immediately, and then we work collaboratively to determine who's going to take any next steps if required.
Thank you for your response.
Of course. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, I have kind of like a follow-up to Mr. Jordan's question.
Okay.
What about when this occurs outside of Springfield Township Police Department jurisdiction? So there's a threat against a student who happens to be playing, I don't know, football at, a school in a neighboring district.
Sure. It makes no difference to us. We have made phone calls. Dr. Lutz has worked with us on making phone calls as far away as the center of the country. So if we are knowledgeable of a threat to anyone, adult, student, family member, we will make every effort to contact whatever agency would be in the best position to respond to that. So I can think within my tenure over the last 5 years of at least 2 instances where we have spoken with federal investigators because we had information that may or may not have been credible. So we err on the side of caution and we reach out to them. because we don't have the kind of relationship we have with the Springfield Township Police.
Okay.
There are cases where
would the township police be informed like at some point? Like, okay, all right.
yeah, typically it's the township first, and then we're looking at what's the next step. Sometimes we receive information directly from federal agencies or the Philadelphia police because they're investigating a matter that may or may not involve our students.
Okay.
And so the dialogue that goes across these groups, as you can see from the state law, and that's the last statement in the addendum, state law requires that we make every effort to communicate with whichever agencies would be the logical next step. And they have been wonderful in that if they're not the correct agency, they'll let us know, here's who we're going to put you in touch with.
Okay.
And that includes our Springfield Township Police.
And just another question is the memorandum of understanding available to the public?
That's a good question. Our MOU is available and is on our website. And it essentially says what are the conditions under which the police must communicate with us, and we will communicate with the police.
And do we have, because I see now that everything's supposed to go through Montgomery County like emergency dispatch, do we have any kind of same agreements with other emergency services, or would we just follow the same approach? Like we just follow, like call 911 and then they figure out maybe who's the best team to respond?
Correct. So Montgomery County Emergency Dispatch is our local 911 service center. And they would like us to communicate with them first because we're within their jurisdiction. And then they will farm as they need to out to whomever might be. And that's sort of an organizational piece for the 911 system. So rather than us, if we call 911 from from the district, that's who you're going to get. You're going to get Montgomery County's emergency dispatch. You're not going to get a state dispatch. You're not going to get Philadelphia dispatch. You're going to get Montgomery County. Okay. And so we included that language because in the past, because we're such a small district and we have a strong relationship with our local police, we have called detectives or the chief of police directly. And our prior MOU actually indicated that our point of contact was the chief. But in looking at their record keeping, they would prefer that it first go through 911. And that was actually a recent change. And because we were having a conversation about adding the threat assessment content and the STPD needed to review and approve that, we used it as an opportunity to say, is there anything else that we want to adjust or tweak in our MOU? And this was something that the police department requested.
No, thanks for that clarification.
Yeah, absolutely. Ms. McGranahan, I thought I saw your hand up, but then it went down. Are you good?
Yes, I'm good. I did have a question, but when you went back to this page, I found the answer. So,
oh, great.
Good.
Okay,
Thank
terrific. All right, so we will bring forward both the MOU and the revised policy language. Again, I still think this is a single read. It's something that's been in place for some time, so that would be May 5th, and that would go into effect immediately. Okay, everybody good?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right. So this next area is actually more of a discussion, and our students may have some thoughts about this as well. So we have a policy on electronic devices, and then I'm going to go ahead one slide. We also have a policy on staff dress and grooming, and these are related concerns. And it is that we are starting to see, and again, this didn't come from PNN, it didn't come from PSBA. This is coming out of the district. We are finding that we may need some more explicit language regarding wearable devices, including smartwatches and meta glasses. We haven't had too many instances of meta glasses, but we have had them, both by staff and by students, in particular at the secondary level. And so we were looking into what should we or could we do to avoid unauthorized recordings, either video or audio, or photos being taken from these electronic devices that are newer? And how can we use language that is not, going to be old 10 minutes from now because there's such a rapid change in what's available. So we worked with our attorney, and in particular, this electronic devices policy is specific to students. So for students, and I'll show you the change in the policy language, what we're looking at is a proposed change that electronic devices will include wearable devices that can take photographs, record, play, or edit audio or video data, store, transmit, or receive calls, messages, text, data, or images, operate online applications, or provide a wireless, unfiltered connection to the internet. And again, this definition is coming from our attorneys and looking at how could we best protect our students from unauthorized, basically audio and video. And then we have, in addition to that, by way of example and without limitation, this includes smartphones, tablets, smartwatches, meta glasses, digital cameras, audio recorders, and any other similar electronic device capable of capturing, recording, or transmitting visual or audio content. So for the students within the existing policy, we thought we would change the definition from what it has been to something a little bit more specific. And this is up for discussion. Again, our goal here is to figure out what is reasonable to communicate within policy now that things like meta glasses exist. And so that's the only change in this policy that we're suggesting. And I'll leave that up for a moment and just because I don't want to make assumptions. So for everybody on the call, we've had a handful of high school students who've come to school wearing meta glasses. Meta glasses have the ability to view the internet like from your eyeglasses, and they also can record video or audio by pressing a button on the glasses. Now, a light comes on, so not a bright light, but there is a light on the frame of the glasses that would allow somebody in view of those glasses to know that there was recording occurring or that the student was using those glasses to search the internet. And so the concern has been, how can we ensure that students are being focused, that they're not out on the internet or elsewhere when they should not be, and that they're not unauthorized recording their peers or others, for example, in the restroom. And so this is our attorney's first shot at potential language. Now, I will say our goal here would be to not enact this policy until the start of the new school year, because we've had the instances we've had at the high school when students have been told that these devices are not authorized, they've been very cooperative. But knowing that the universe continues to evolve, we want to be prepared for what comes next. So Alec, I saw your hand first.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering with this change in language, I feel like meta glasses would apply under the old definition. So is the proposed change just to make it more explicit for those who maybe overlook meta glasses?
That's what we were thinking. And I'm certainly open to the conversation. This is, we're early in the challenge. And so we're just wanting to look and see what could we do to make it more clear, because this is sort of, and I don't know what'll be created between now and, November. So it's possible the existing definition is clear enough. But we did ask our attorney for new language that maybe is more explicit. So I don't know what your thoughts are, and I see Dr. Aberly. Let me see what your question is first, and then Alec, if you have more to contribute, please feel free.
I I've never worn a pair. I don't know the exact capability, but is there a possibility that students could like use these and wear them like during exams and potentially like cheat in exams as well?
Yes, they have full access to the internet from their glasses. So I've never worn a pair either, but as I understand it, when I'm looking at the lens of my glasses, you're wearing glasses, Kate's we're all, a number of us are wearing glasses, Isabella's wearing glasses, that when you can see the internet in that lens. It becomes a screen. And there is an indication, which is a small light on the frame of the glasses. Um, but with that said, it's sort of a question about, do we just say you can't wear them at all? Because right now, students can wear, at the high school, students can wear smartwatches. We do not allow smartwatches K through 8, as you know. And
Yeah.
so it's a question of, should we be going more strict or more explicit in, and part of the challenge is you can get a prescription metaglass. So there's a cost. So if I'm a parent and I don't know that I can't purchase my child metaglasses and I do, now they can't wear their, I don't know, $700 prescription glasses because I
So
haven't been explicit about saying that.
I just took a quick look at what we have in my workplace, and these are like banned without specific authorization. So I know that there are instances where people have like maybe done like a demonstration of something they want to record and show other people. You would need specific authorization to do that, but certainly where I work, they are banned.
Understood. Mr. Jordan, I saw your hand. And then Mrs. McGranahan, I saw your hand.
Yes, the only thing I would add, and to your point, Dr. Yannicone, I would add it'd be like devices, apparatus, and accessories, because you get real dicey when you're talking about. So, for instance, your point of prescription glasses, is that really a device, or is it really an accessory, or is it really? You understand me? So,
Yes.
so that's the only thing I would add to that.
Okay.
My recommendation would be add to that. Of course, that'll be up to the legal team to determine whether that's reasonable or not. But
We could say electronic devices, apparatus, or accessories,
yes,
including wearable devices, apparatus, or accessories that can. Because who knows what's going to be created? I don't know what's coming. Again, the purpose here was to not, the primary concern was unauthorized video and audio of peers, or staff, I mean, if you're in a class.
right.
And I will say to Dr. Aberley's comment a moment ago, there are exceptions, right? And so under the supervision of the district for health, safety, or emergency reasons, for an IEP or a 504, if there are classroom or instructional related activities where the teacher is asking us to try them out, and so it's not that it couldn't happen, but it would happen under supervision. And so that's the language that is in the existing policy. Mrs. McGranahan, I see your hand.
Yeah, I was just curious about, and I know this isn't official yet, but with the state talking about the bell-to-bell restrictions on cell phones and stuff, if that were to go through, how consistent is our language with the language of that law? And would all of these devices and apparatus and accessories be included in that law as well?
It's a great question. We don't know when and if that law will be
Sure.
approved. We know, so that might be an August policy committee meeting discussion.
Right, right, right,
Our
right, right,
next meeting, we just don't know what's happening there.
right.
There's a lot of debate, as I understand it, on the House floor about whether that ban should be bell to bell
Mm-hmm.
or instructional periods, because there's been
Mm-hmm.
some significant pushback, not
Yep.
only from student advocates, but also from administration,
Yes.
because of the challenges of
The
enforcing
logistics
that
of it.
ban.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Um,
Um,
I
and
think there's a split among parent groups as well.
okay. And
Yeah.
then my other question is about those exceptions. So I'm going to use a student who maybe has a glucose monitor and that's connected to their phone or something like
Yes.
that. Is there any reason why we would want to specify which devices students are allowed to have for that? I mean,
I think
do you
from my
understand what I'm
perspective,
saying?
yeah, I hear you, but I think number 2 under here, IEP and 504 agreements are
Mhm.
intended to be
It could be spelled out
personalized.
individually in there.
Yeah, so I think we
Yeah.
would want to allow the team to make those decisions based on whatever, because
Yep.
again, who knows what device will
It's going to come down the road. Yeah.
exactly that may be helpful
Yeah.
to a student. And so I think we want to keep that
No, that
in
makes
the
sense.
hands of the IEP team or the
Yes,
504
that
team.
makes sense. I just didn't want someone who has that exception to then come in with every wearable available. And yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Understood. Understood.
Yeah.
And again, this policy really only applies to 912 because K8 we already have
Right.
the
Right.
ban on devices. And we did have one exception on a wearable device for one elementary student that I'm aware of. And so, for the most part, I think this has been smoothly implemented. But with the new meta glasses, we just wanted to, and because they're so discreet, I think the
Mhm.
difference is that if a student holds out a phone or is recording, it feels less discreet.
You can see
Whereas
it.
the glasses, the light is really small
Mm-hmm.
and you have to be looking for it to find it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm going to ask Alec, do you still have your hand up? Well, your hand is still up. Do you
Yes,
have
I
more that
do.
you'd like to contribute? Sure.
So you were just talking about how much meta glasses conceal like the fact that you're accessing the internet or the fact that it's recording you or regardless. And I'm just curious about what did you guys do when the first Apple Watches were being developed and people were using those because those are much better concealed than your phone. And I think with the Meta glasses, you mentioned some components of the Meta glasses that are indicative of a smart device happening inside of your glasses. So I'm just wondering what procedure would be to keep those things off of like kids' faces when they're taking a test or any instance where it's not in order.
Yeah, it's a great question, Alec. The truth is, when the smartwatches first came out, we didn't do anything to the policy. It just wasn't part of the conversation. But with a watch, you can ask somebody to take a watch off and you're not impeding their vision. The concern is that somebody will purchase meta glasses that are part of their vision needs, right? If I take my glasses off, you are all really blurry. And so with the glasses, the concern is that we don't want families to purchase glasses that are necessary for their child's vision that also have this feature because we don't want them using the meta glasses for the internet features and for the recording features. And so that's the difference between these two. I also think, quite frankly, with artificial intelligence, we've been much more focused on potential devices and their potential, right? Future devices and their potential. It's not an easy topic for sure. It's complicated.
It's
Dr.
definitely
Oh, sorry about that.
complicated.
Go ahead.
I think I'll think about some ways maybe we could limit that use because I really like that point about how kids may use it to like they might have it built into their prescription glasses and I don't know how our policy could get around that so I'll have to think about that.
Thank you. Dr. Iverly, and
Just
then
really,
Isabella.
just really quickly, as it's shown on the screen at the moment, the sentence isn't complete. So it says health
Oh,
suites
you want
and
to see the rest?
other.
Yes, yes, of course. Sure.
Just probably needs some editing.
Oh, I see. I see what
You
you're
see what I
saying.
mean? Yeah, it kind of
I
like
do.
there's the end of the sentence is missing.
Yes, it looks like I understood. Okay. So depending on Isabella, I'm sorry. What's your comment or question?
So I just feel like it might be beneficial to put like more explicit language in the proposed change about why these like meta glasses or like smartwatches or like devices or like Mr. Jordan said, like accessories too, aren't like allowed because then that might kind of like prevent the need for more descriptive language as more devices that kind of are similar to this evolve and are created?
Sure, that would actually fall under purpose, because right now it says to support an educational environment that is orderly, safe, and secure for district students and employees. We could add a sentence regarding unauthorized audio and videotape, or inappropriate use of internet recesses or artificial intelligence. Let me bring that back to our attorney. We can see if we can beef up purpose, which will help guide the conversation moving forward. And I will say again, I don't necessarily want to bring this policy forward next week. I wanted to have the conversation and then see where everybody's thoughts are. And then we would bring it back in the beginning of the school in August so that we could implement it within our code of conduct. That's the other piece of this, is that the language that's in the policy directly goes into our code of conduct, in particular at the high school, in order to help clarify for students at that grade level what is and is not permitted. So let me get a little bit more legal guidance on purpose, and then we'll go from there. And then Dr. Lutz, I know we're working on the handbooks for the June 1st academic affairs meeting. We can also discuss it with our instructional cabinet. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to move forward to the staff one. Now the staff one's a little different because we've only had a couple of occasions where staff have worn meta glasses. And so again, our attorney suggested that we ban the wearing of meta glasses and include this language that they will not wear any item capable of recording video or audio or while attending or participating in any school-sponsored event or activity. And then lists smart glasses, body cameras, recording-enabled jewelry, smart watches, etc., and then that there could be disciplinary action if they were. Now, that's what our attorneys recommended. As an administrative team, we prefer to say that you should, well, if you wear them, you may not record because they're adults, and say you may not record video or audio while on district premises or while attending or participating in any school-sponsored event or activity, regardless of location. So that we wouldn't necessarily say you couldn't wear a pair of meta glasses, but that you're not to record with them. And so, let me go backwards, I apologize. So here's the policy language for staff. And again, this is dress and grooming. And so it's the only policy where it might make sense to put in that they should not wear items capable of recording video or audio. Or we could say, if wearing an item capable of recording video or audio, you may not. And then if you're in violation, could be subject to disciplinary action. So thoughts about the staff policy? Dr. Aberle?
Would you have an exception in there, as in with authority from the superintendent or something like that, in case there was an educational reason behind doing whatever it is that a teacher or a member of staff would like to do?
Yeah, we could put in a provision for instruction. I could work with our attorneys on that for sure.
And I can't think of a specific, example, but, certainly in my workplace, like I say, we've done it for people doing demos of, a particular process. And so, you're either doing it live or you're recording it so that people can follow it later, those types of things.
Yeah, we could think of some exceptions. Could also work with our Teachers Association and Support Staff Association on where that might be relevant. For example, a place where it would already be banned by policy would be bus drivers, because I don't want them watching the internet while they're driving, right? So that'd be a logical ban. but maybe there are some exceptions in classroom instruction or in some activities where we would want that to be the case. Or with express written permission from the principal for an educational purpose. Mr. Jordan?
Yeah, so in addition to that, I do know of devices in which they're used for health monitoring purposes. So, I- I guess to Dr. Abilene point, that it should be, I guess, approved by um, the superintendent and our principal.
Mm-hmm. That we do have a sentence here which you can say if an employee feels that an exception would be enable the employee to carry out their assigned duties more effectively, a request should be made to the and then we can mark superintendent or immediate supervisor, and I would move the proposed change above that sentence, right? Ahead of delegation of responsibility. So it's certainly something that we can explore a little bit more and just see if that makes sense. We can bring it back with those exception possibilities, and I would probably recommend immediate supervisor so that they wouldn't have to disclose, for example, a health condition to me. They could disclose it to their immediate supervisor.
Thank you for your comment.
Of course. Okay. I am going to. Oh, Alec, do you have a question? Sorry, I was just looking at for the hands. Okay.
That's all right. Actually, I think I came up with something that could help our problem there. I think for students who regularly wear prescription smart glasses as in the ones that fall under the definition of an electronic device,
Yes.
they're expected to bring a pair that does not fall under the definition of an electronic device. And if they fail to bring that extra pair, they forfeit the right to wear those specific glasses when it's not in order to use a electronic device.
Okay.
What do you think about that?
Dr. Lutz, I think that would go well into our AR and student handbook as an exception. I think that's a good suggestion, Alec. We'll work on that language to bring forward. I definitely don't. I definitely feel these will not be ready for next week, either the staff dressing grooming or the electronic devices. But I did want to have the conversation because we're just starting this winter to experience meta glasses both by staff and students in isolated incidents. It's not like there's a rush on them, but we are seeing it. So I wanted to bring it forward. Okay. All right. So these last two are pretty brief. Working periods. This is a very simple policy. State law was changed essentially to say that we should refer to state law when addressing the board's authority to determine the hours and days during which district programs and services will be available to students in the community. It essentially allows the district to determine your calendar within state law. And I think it's a preview because there's some members of the legislature that would like to say that you cannot start before Labor Day. So I think they're looking at policy before they potentially request a change in the law. So whether that will happen, I don't know, but this is a very minor change. It just says here that the board, in the second paragraph, the board has the authority and responsibility to determine the hours and days during which district programs and services shall be available to students in the community, consistent with the administrative compensation plan, individual contracts, applicable collective bargaining agreements, and it used to say, and board resolutions. So they've now added and state law. And the only topic I know of relative to hours and days that's currently in place is that there is a significant debate at the House in Pennsylvania regarding whether or not Pennsylvania should bar school years starting before Labor Day. There's a very strong Jersey Shore lobby interested in keeping school starting after Labor Day. It could be something else, but that's the only thing I could think of, which would bring this forward. So it is the only change in this policy. from its existing language. So to me, it is a very minor change, and one we certainly should enact because the Pennsylvania School Boards Association has recommended we do so. Any questions or concerns on that one? That's an easy,
Nope.
much easier than the last couple, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so we're up to public comment, and I do believe we have some attendees. So I'm just going to give you a moment to raise your hand in the chat if you have a public comment. Okay, and seeing none, I'm going to move forward. So our next meeting will be in August. I'm going to say it's TBD because I am uncertain right now when the Pennsylvania News Network through the PSBA will be coming through. It usually comes sometime over the summer with updated law relative to what occurs between now and then. But we'll schedule that first policy meeting of the new school year when we have information to bring forward that's relevant to the committee. Are there any questions or concerns? And Isabella and Alec, typically this would be your last meeting. But given that you've engaged in the conversation to this point, I will invite you in August when we have a follow-up conversation, in particular on the electronic devices and staff dress and grooming. And if you're available, we'd certainly love to have you with us. It's usually a late August meeting, so close to the start of the school year, but usually before the start. Because then if we have to make any tweaks to the code of conduct, we do that. All
I
right.
would love to attend that meeting. Yeah.
Terrific. I'd be happy to invite you.
Me as well.
All right, we'll make sure of it. And after that, it'll be the next class because I know I usually have juniors as board reps because senior year becomes pretty hectic for you guys pretty quickly. But we'll be happy to have you guys on that first meeting. Any other questions or areas of concern for the board? All right, terrific. So I will adjourn the meeting and I hope you all have a terrific weekend.
Thank
All
you.
right, same to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.